Hey guys, it's Frederik of the FWX podcast. I have another thing I want to talk about when it comes to story pitches and theories, and I will do that in a moment. I will talk about Doctor Strange from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But first, I would like to inform you that you can like this video, you can also subscribe to the channel, which helps the channel and the podcast become more available to those people who like to watch this kind of content, and that would really help us as well. And you can also share this with friends and family or your work colleagues or just here online. You can comment away in the comment section as well, and I would love for you to do that. And also, one last thing, I'm not a native English speaker, so if I get something wrong, or if I mispronounce something, or something else goes wrong, that's purely human. Okay, let's start talking about Doctor Strange. And I'm gonna bring up some pictures to help me with this. So I'm still here, of course. So here we am. Here we are. So for years, we've had this guy, Benedict Cumberbatch, as Doctor Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is number one. It's a pretty cool poster as well. And I've talked in a different video about his journey, how he, as an arrogant prick jerk, although a masterful surgeon, became a master of the mystical arts, as it is called in Marvel, in the MCU, and that led to him learning more about that world, mastering the magic that belongs to the mystical arts, and how he is very quickly able to do that because of his abilities to study. He There's a line in the first movie where he says not just that it took him years to do it, but also because he's able to do multiple things at the same time. You know what? We'll look that line up for a moment. So I'm gonna head here to the internet for a moment. Ah, yes, here we are. So he has photographic memory, which is a key part of his abilities. And like it has highlighted him here, it allows him to perfectly recall information, a skill that is crucial for navigating his magical studies, how to plan in complex situations, and remembering all those alternate realities that he has viewed. For example, when in Infinity War, he uses the time stone to go back and look at all the possible solutions for a way for them to fight Thanos where they don't all die, which is what happens in Infinity War. And I can't believe I have to say this, but spoiler alert if you haven't seen that movie. Anyway, so he is able to do a lot of stuff and evolve. And we saw that go from the first movie into his appearances with the Avengers, and then also up until his second installment with Multiverse of Madness, which is, in my opinion, an underrated and great movie from the MCU, but where I think it suffers for a lot of people is that they have an image of what Sam Raimi does with his original horror work, and there's much less of that in this movie, in Multiverse of Madness. But to some extent, it's still in there, which I find okay because I'm not a huge horror guy, and I don't really like a lot of horror anyway. And the whole reason why I want to talk about him as a character is because of where he goes next. So, at the very end of this movie, we get that scene with Clea, the purple lace attire, blonde, in the shape of Charlize Theron, who makes her cameo at the very end. She tells him that he needs to help her with incursions in the multiverse. And I think everybody knows who Charlize Theron is. She has a freaking Oscar for one of her many roles. And so she's an amazing actress. She plays that role, Clea, to a minimal effect there because she's not alone in this movie, of course. And so she takes him on a journey to fix these incursions, which probably leans into the idea of a third Doctor Strange movie, which I think will happen. But the question is when, where, and how will that happen? And there's many ideas out there on YouTube and on the net about it, and I don't really have a specific way to put it to put them in a way to go. I just have a couple of loose ideas. One would be that he has to deal with the fact of the void that we have learned about with Loki, and that would also be an interesting thing because Doctor Strange was able to find Loki and trap him for a long while. In For Ragnarok, he kept him falling for 30 minutes, as Loki literally says in that movie. And so he's more than capable to catch up with Loki, which might be an interesting avenue to consider when it comes to number three. There's another aspect that they've been dipping into, that Marvel has been dipping into in the last couple of years. We've seen the announcement of and the series of Ironheart, which I covered, by the way. You can find that coverage by clicking the cards. And we got introduced to another person from the so called Beyond, and that was Mephisto, the devil like creature from Marvel, from the comics, now in the MCU, played by Sacha Baron Cohen, to terrifying effect. And that likely introduces the idea of Doctor Strange maybe going to the depths of hell, which would be like in a universe, really. There's also that moment from this movie, in fact, in Multiverse of Madness, where he and America Chavez are going through all those possible places, and one of those is a very hellscape kind of environment. And I think that will be an interesting place to go to for him as well. Also, because this leans into the possible origins for Doctor Strange, whose mom was captured by Mephisto. And you can check this on the internet to be sure about it. And that could be the place where Doctor Strange meets up with Doctor Doom in whatever way he appears. Because we know RDJ. I'm gonna go to a picture of RDJ. A little lower here. Here he is. So RDJ is gonna play Doctor Doom. This is, of course, the comics version of him. We did see a glimpse of how he looks like in the Fantastic Four movie at the very end when he meets up with Franklin a couple of years later after that movie ended. That story ended, in fact. And so it would be an interesting take if we could see Doctor Strange maybe meet up with Doctor Doom. Of course, how would that happen? Because timeline wise, story wise, and then the place I just said, it could be in hell. It could be in conversation with Mephisto. That would be that would be a hefty movie, though. Now that I think about it, if you have Mephisto played by Sacha Baron Cohen, then meet up with Doctor Doom, with RDJ and his budget that he has, and then with Doctor Strange with Benedict Cumberbatch, that would be one hell of a moment. Now that I think about it, and there's more stuff that we could do. Uh, well, speaking of hell and other figures involved with hell, there was a special project that Marvel did with the MCU a good while ago. Excuse me, was the Werewolf by Night special presentation. They've introduced some other interesting characters from the supernatural side. Don't forget Agatha as well. And then also Mistress Death, played by Aubrey Plaza. They could all be involved in a way when it comes to the Doctor Strange third installment. And but there's definitely like an interesting kind of avenue to be taken when it comes to putting out the origin of Doctor Strange with Doctor Doom, which, if you think about it, is actually inevitable because Doctor Doom, for many people who know this from the comics, is originally he has a lot of tech and has a scarred face and all of that, but he also has magic that he uses. And actually, that could be involved with a couple of other things that we're talking about here. So I'm thinking, I'm gonna bring up another picture here for a moment. So I talked about Ironheart a moment ago. I'm gonna bring up another one, which we learned about in the Black Panther movies, especially the second one, where we met uh, Riri Williams in Wakanda Forever. And the whole thing about that movie, I'm gonna bring it up again, is that there's basically like a war happening for all the vibranium. And another movie as well that I wanna point out for a moment. Yes, this one. And in Captain America Brave New World, you also have the fight for another material, and that is from the celestial islands that the Eternals fought for to prevent Earth from becoming a hotbed for an actual celestial Tiamat that was supposedly stuck in the Earth by the original Celestials. And then they managed to seal him, I will say, which allowed Tiamat to become like a substance in of itself. And I'm trying to think of the damn name. It's that same material that Wolverine has when he gets those iron claws, which it's not iron, but it's another one. I'm gonna just briefly look it up for a moment. Uh, it just jumped in my head. Uh, Adamantium is the thing, is the kind of substance that is made by the Eternals protecting Earth from becoming basically like an egg about to crack because Tiamat is emerging, which happens in this movie in Captain America Brave New World. And The whole point I'm leading to is that adamantium, when used well, or vibranium if used well, could be used with magic, fused with magic even, to become a nigh impenetrable substance that allows anybody else, like, imagine if adamantium were not just a way to attack people like Wolverine does, but as armor. And so effectively, go back to Doctor Doom here. Like in this picture you see here, he kind of has what looks like iron vambraces, which is the kind of armor for your arms, and spauldrons for your upper arms. This is deep armor and weapons lore that I'm using here from playing video games, of course. And so basically, those things that he's wearing, those vambraces, those pauldrons, maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, you can comment away in the comment section about that. I would love that, by the way. If we get more interaction on the channel from you guys, which would be lovely. And not just a like or a subscription, which is also very nice for you to do, by the way. So I'm all boiling this down to if Doctor Doom has adamantium as an armor, and then he meets up with Doctor Strange, and he gets taught about magic, the mystical arts in this case, he could well be on his way to becoming the man that he is that we're going to see in Doomsday. So, of course, you need to think about the fact that at what point do we see Doctor Doom then? Will he be the Tony Stark version that we know from the original 616 universe, where he's all grown up? Or maybe we see like a younger version who's still learning, who is looking for his mom because, uh, as I said, that's part of his comic book origins, is that his mom was taken away from him by Mephisto. And then also, importantly, since I was talking about Multiverse of Madness, you know, bring up that picture again. A huge plot of this movie is also about Wanda. And for all those comic book diehards and know it alls, you know that she's also very involved with Doctor Doom and with Doctor Strange. In fact, her whole arc here could be that this is all part of Doom's plan, really. The Vibranium War, the Adamantium War, meeting up with Doctor Strange at some point. That could all lead up to him involved with Wanda somehow. Like, this might be a little throwaway line from Captain America Civil War, which I also covered. You can find that by clicking the card. And so he says for a moment, there's that conversation, the discussion between Stark and Captain Rogers, Captain America, where they're talking about what to do with Wanda because she's a foreigner initially, Sokovian, but she's also in the US without any visa or any kind of practicality or protocol, or whatever. And I'm not using this to talk about politics, but just purely in terms of story, as to where to go with her. Because at the end of this movie, Multiverse of Madness, she has embraced the fact that, oh, I have been corrupted by the Darkhold, that huge black book that has corrupted her. Also, a very prominent aspect from her own series, from WandaVision, where we learn more about Agnes. And so this is all very interesting lore aspects from the MCU to get to the point that number three of Doctor Strange could be just as huge as, let's say, I'm gonna get one of those pictures here. Let's see for a moment. Like maybe this might be a crazy thing to think about, but maybe it could be as monumental as the very first Black Panther. In a way, if you fit everything together, Doctor Strange meeting up with Clea to go and find those incursions, but then along the way he gets distracted by something happening in hell, where Mephisto is holding on to the mother of a Tony Stark looking like Doctor Doom, who needs help. And because Doctor Strange has such a weird dynamic with people, is not really for anybody else, it's very for himself. And so he notices that in Doctor Doom, in Victor, who has something very similar, that he accidentally co creates Doctor Doom, gives him the magical abilities and the training and the learning and all of that, that he inadvertently creates Doctor Doom, which would be an interesting aspect to say the least, as he then goes off to go and fight these incursions and what is happening with them, and then have this whole journey of realization where he comes to terms with the fact that I have done some dumb and shitty things and inadvertently made some bad stuff, and I could be better than this. Which, when you think about that in the way I just said it, could be an interesting redemption arc for him. Like, I've done some good, I've done some bad. I was that at the very beginning of my life as well. I've learned a lot. And that could be an interesting arc for him to have his full trilogy in this moment. I'm gonna put that picture here back. So that would be an interesting arc for Doctor Strange, for him to go on to an adventure with Clea, leading to him in hell, talking to maybe a younger Tony Stark looking like Dr. Victor Von Doom, inadvertently helping him with magic, with training, with becoming a sorcerer. Like I said, the comic book people will know this. Initially, Doctor Doom is not just a tech person because he's involved with Reed Richards and all of that, but because he's also ashamed of the fact that he has to hide himself behind a mask. Then he goes looking for his mom and all of that, and that could be a very interesting journey for Doctor Strange to realize, oh, I've done something bad. I need to fix this. I need to patch things up. I need to amend the situation. And that could be an interesting journey for him and complete his arc as his journey and his trilogy finally comes to an end with number three. And I'm going to open up a question to you guys in the comments if you want. What would that story be called? If Doctor Strange, if, it's a huge if, of course, if that is the journey for him, what would that story be called? And I'm trying to think of one right now, But really, I want to open this up to you guys. What do you think that story should be called? Okay, that's all from me for now. Uh, those things before I go. You can like this video, you can subscribe to the channel, which helps the channel and the podcast to become more available to people who like this kind of content when it comes to story pitches and theories. When we're talking about action movies, we're talking about superheroes, we're talking about stories in their entirety, whether it's about terminology or characters or arcs or all of that. So, thank you very much for being here. You can also share this with friends and family, or people here online, or people at your work. And I would love for you guys to actually have conversations in the comment section as well. But also, please do that in a friendly and polite way. And then finally, I've been Frederik. This has been the FWX podcast, and I will see you guys in a next video. See ya.